Black Out Loud Media Group. Welcome back to another episode of the Brown Sugar Cafe podcast, the place where poetry meets conversation. I'm your host, Terrence P. Elmore, and before we get into today's topic, make sure you hit that plus sign so you don't miss an episode. Also, please subscribe to my blog, thebrownssugarcafe.blog, and if you find any value in this episode or any other episodes, make sure you leave a heartfelt review. So with that being said, let's get to it. Welcome back, everybody. I hope that you all are doing well. I hope that you all are having a good, start to a spring. I know it really doesn't feel like spring, but I hope you all are enjoying the spring season so far. And today I'm rolling with these guests. Today I have another special guest. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Raphael James. I'm a news anchor here at Live 5 News, WCSC TV, CBS affiliate in Charleston, South Carolina.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for just saying yes. I've been a fan of yours for a very long time, and I like what you're doing outside of your news reporting. Your Facebook page has a lot of positive messages in it and a lot of positive reminders. And I said, I just have to get Raphael on, not only because I'm a fan, but you spreading so much of a wonderful message of hope and love and inspiration.
I appreciate that. And yes, that is something I tried to do. And I see the same thing in you and your writings and your page. Love the Brown Sugar podcast. And the way you write makes people think. And that's ultimately what I want to do with my posts, make people think. You don't have to agree with it. But if you think about it, if we can have a decent conversation about it, we're already moving in the right direction.
That's something that I wish we did more of, is just have open conversation. I miss the days where we could have open and honest debates with each other and people not get upset and not want to talk to you anymore. I mean, there was a time where we could disagree and be friends, and it doesn't seem like people really do that anymore.
It doesn't. I made a rule with myself. I'd heard it, and I made a rule to never talk politics at work. And I stuck by that rule for a very long time. But I met this guy, and we couldn't be further apart in terms of our beliefs, our cultural upbringings. But he was a decent human being. So that's where we started, just being decent and talking to each other. And before you know it, we got to talking about politics, and I couldn't stop myself. We got to talking about those things that we knew the other person felt differently about. And instead of a blow up that you might have expected, it became a really decent exchange of ideas. I wasn't offended by his viewpoints. He wasn't offended by mine. It was more like, oh, that's how you think? That's interesting. Why do you think that way? And then he would tell, then I would share. So we never changed each other's minds about what we felt about a certain thing, but we developed a friendship that was built on substance. And even though we disagreed, we could still come to see the humanity in each other. And I think that's what's lacking in society today. We are so afraid to be challenged for our thoughts. And I feel like if I own a thought, if I have a thought that I cannot defend, that I cannot put a reasoned argument behind, then do I really have that thought, or am I borrowing someone else's? So iron sharpens iron. And when we're able to have these real conversations, then we begin to grow. Then we begin to see things from someone else's perspective.
You hit the nail on the head. I always talk about communication. I find a lot of times that when people are having disagreements or arguments or falling out, it most times has to do with a misunderstanding. Somebody taking something the wrong way, somebody maybe being offended by it and not be willing to have an open conversation or hearing the person's side. right now, we communicate a lot through text messaging and at work through emails, and tone could be mistaken in a lot of those ways. If you're already feeling some way towards somebody or about a certain subject, you can pretend to hear any type of tone through a text, through an email, and it might not
Absolutely.
necessarily apply, but you won't know until you have that conversation.
Absolutely. And that happens all the time. I am in the communications business. My only job is to communicate. However, within my industry, miscommunications happen all the time. You mentioned a text message, an email, a Teams message. We FaceTime. You have so many different means of getting messages across, of communicating with people. We can communicate with people a dozen different ways, but it's not always effective. Remember I don't know if you're quite old enough to remember this, but the pagers.
Oh yeah, I
At
had
one
one in
point,
high school.
all right, you had the beepers, and you put in a certain code, and the person on the other side knew what that
Yeah.
meant because you had established this means this. So now you've got text, you've got emojis, you've got all this other kind of stuff. You've got all of these great ways to be able to communicate. But if it's not effective, we aren't doing any better than the Stone Age. If I can say
Yeah.
a thing and you don't get the meaning that I was trying to convey, we failed to communicate.
That's true. That's one of the things I think about when it comes to social media. It's amazing that something that connects us all and connect people from different parts of the world, it still disconnects us because there's no, like you said, you could send. I can't believe you brought up the pages, and now I'm thinking about the codes that I had when I had a pager, and
Right.
the person knew what that meant, and then certain things you could say that would be like a word if you turn it upside down. But now we're in a society where you think that everybody would be kind of more bridged because we're have more access to people. I remember back in the day having a pen pal and not really knowing what that person looks like. But now we could, like you said, FaceTime or be online and see what the person looks like, but we still have such a disconnect. It's so strange to me that with something that's supposed to make us more social, it feels like we're less social.
And the ironic part about it to me is, like you said, something that's supposed to connect us more isn't necessarily doing that, because the real conversations, you remember going places where you would go to a family member's house and just stay for a few hours, and you just sit around and talk, just
Yeah.
sit around and talk and sit around and laugh. um, Social media can't necessarily duplicate that
No.
being in the room, that hearing somebody's uh, gut wrenching laughter, that slapping somebody on the back and saying, "Hey, you remember this?" You know, you can't duplicate that electronically. There's a vibe in that room when families get to reminiscing, and no matter how uh, how great social media is at kind of putting us in a position to communicate, those interpersonal one-on-one interactions are always going to win out, in my opinion. I'm old school like that.
I'm old school like that too. I've always been the person who rather, like, if I needed to call customer service something, I'd rather go to the place and talk to the people. I mean,
Right.
if I had to. But nowadays, you barely get a human on the phone, or they might give you a website, and I just miss that personal interaction. I think a lot of that really has to do with trying to get back in the swing after the pandemic. Is
Definitely.
kind of not as easy, I guess, because we've gotten used to not really going out and visiting people and seeing people. But whenever I get a chance and I'm around people, it's like, right back where we left off. Nothing feels awkward, nothing feels odd. And I love interacting with people face to face. That's just, I guess I'm old school too. I was telling my wife the other day about how my mother always made sure we went to visit people, no matter what city they lived in, if it was an older person. And I got to know these people who she knew from her childhood through her taking us to their houses to go visit them. And that brings me to my next point. There was an event in St. George, where we actually connected at, and your topic was talk to your people. And that really spoke to me because a friend of mine, Charlie, we have another podcast together, and we were talking about that he's already started, and I haven't started yet, but he started recording conversations with his family members to get that down because, his idea is to use like audio so people can feel more comfortable. But you said something more interesting, which was actually take video of the situation, a conversation between you and that family member. How did you get started with that?
When I was a kid, I loved working with cameras and recording things. And so naturally that flowed into the job that I have now. But I would just take the little video camera we had and try to make movies and things like that and create stories and plays and things like that with my siblings. So that's always been my mode of expression. But today, you've got everything you need in the palm of your hands to
Yeah.
conduct a meaningful interview, to document, to capture. I was up late last night looking at all the things that one video editing software can do. It's called CapCut. And you can do
Yeah.
so many things with that one thing. You have no excuse now. So everybody has a phone. If you have access to that human being, why not take a few minutes to do some interaction? And what my goal is, what my mission is now, is to teach people how to do that, to show them the line of questioning, because you can't just jump into a conversation with Aunt Louise. Where were you on the night of August 16th, 1974? It has to be a little more nuanced
Right.
than that. You have to have some charisma. You have to ease them into a conversation. Maybe that conversation would be, Aunt Louise, when you got married, tell me what that was like. How is it different than some of the weddings that you see now? That is an entree into history, into your family's history. And when she mentions something, then another question will come up. And then now you're on an organic mission to learn more about this person, to have an appreciation of their life. Now you have permission to ask them advice. You overcame this, and that. I'm dealing with this. What's your advice? How can I get past that? And those are some sage moments. And that is powerful. So something you're already using, something you're already paying for, use that thing to create treasure for you. I'm not saying you're going to get financially wealthy by sitting down and recording this history, but once that person is no longer on the scene, it's more valuable than gold. It's more valuable than anything to just be able to go through your phone, go through your memories and hit play and hear that person's voice. I lost my dad a year ago, and to hear his voice, I've done interviews with him, and to sit down and play those interviews and to hear him laugh again and to hear him tell some of the stories that he told us, it's priceless. It really is. And to be able to share those with other family members and, to see the emotion come up when they play back this video that you've given, to see them appreciate that person through something that you created, there's no feeling like it. And now, and I know I'm talking a lot, but this is something I'm passionate about. Not only you and me, but my kids, their kids, my grandkids who will never know their, my dad. Now they can see it. Now they can hear it. Now they can have a reference to what he was like. I lost my grandmother when I was maybe a year or 2 years old, so I never knew her. So when other people talk about her, I can kind of sense what she was like, but I don't have that connection. But if I could have something to remind me of her voice, to hear her talking and maybe a message to me, and that's something. Hey, if I'd had the forethought, hey, Dad, your great grandchildren, you want to say something to them? my grandkids, tell them something you want them to know. How, how awesome would that have been to be able to play that for people who aren't even born?
Wow. You really got my mind going because I'm thinking back to family members that maybe I was too small to remember or weren't here when I was born, and seeing pictures and hearing my other family members talk about them and how they were and how awesome that would have been if there was some video of that and to actually see for myself because, I can kind of, we can kind of make our own voices in our head when we hear these stories and kind of play them back, but it's a different thing to actually have that voice with it. And so I really think what you're doing is really, it's very important. It's giving people a thought of something that, because we all know that we're not going to be here for long, but then when we're in those moments, we don't think about capturing certain conversations, capturing things for the next generation and the generation after that. I think we just, and it's not that we don't care to share those things with the next generation. It's just that I guess we don't think that much about it. But what you're doing is really opening conversations and getting people thinking about it, because like you said, we have our phones and you can do a ton of things on your phones. You can, and people record stuff anyway, things they probably shouldn't be recording. But and posted it on Facebook, going live at moments that they probably shouldn't be going live. And so why don't we take the tools that we have to leave something for the next generation after that? I know as far as like with writing, I always tell people that everybody has a book inside of them, and some people say a story, but I like to say a book because you don't necessarily have to publish the book and try to sell it everywhere. You could do about 10 copies and pass it around in your family, but it's still something that you can leave them that's tangible. And now you're giving me the idea. I was going to just do audio, but I'm really have to look into doing like video recordings with my family members and getting the stuff documented.
It's valuable. I don't think you'll be disappointed at all. Some people, I'm doing a course on it as well. I'm working on it and it should be coming out soon. I've got so many things in my head I'm trying to birth. I've got a book coming out that,
Okay.
I just have to sit myself down and write it. Some of it is painful. Some of it are things that I really don't want to examine, but that's what I'm working on now. But when we get into the press, when we get into the point where we're doing these things, it's going to be helpful to someone else down the line. It's not just for us. But I like what you said about the book. That's part of the thing that's kind of slowing me down and holding me back. I'm like, what if I write all of this and it's not successful? People don't care. Because there's already a voice in me saying that right now. Nobody cares about what you think. Who are you to try to write a book about this? Nobody's, but somebody might.
Yeah.
Somebody might be able to be helped by it. So I think I'm going to have to push myself to do that.
Yeah, because I'm a firm believer that the things that we go through aren't always just about us. They're to help other people. And especially with like the painful stuff, the things that we might not want to talk about, if you're at a place where you could talk about that thing, and if even if you haven't fully healed, I've talked to people who say that writing it out open up the healing. It's things that they may have thought they got over with, and it was actually just dormant and not dead. Writing is therapeutic. I've found that writing really helps me just get my thoughts out. And I remember when George Floyd was murdered, writing is what helped me kind of get out of that, because that situation was very serious. And sad to say that we've seen stuff like that before, but it was something about that particular moment that just really had me in a messed up place. And after I prayed about it, I heard write. And that's what I did. And it helped me. So I really think that writing is therapeutic. And even if you don't necessarily sit down and write, we talked about it earlier, you can do like voice memos or something like that to just get your thoughts out. And so I tell people all the time, you don't worry about who may not want to hear it, who may not read it or whatever. But as long as you get it out, if you could just touch one person, that's enough.
Why do you think it is that writing or speaking on a thing that is troubling you and weighing you down, why do you think that that's so therapeutic? Why does it seem to have a magic that works us through those emotions?
I think it's because we're forced to face it from different angles. We're forced to actually look at it, because if we're just keeping it in our heads, we can just say whatever and just kind of push it to the side. But I think when we're intentional about getting it out, we're forced to actually process our thoughts. We're forced to actually get the words together. And sometimes with getting the words together, you can get clarity and understanding. I know a lot of times when I ask people, like I have an idea of something and like, hey, I got an idea I want to talk to you about. And as I'm giving the person the idea, I'm changing things and talking to them. And then it's like, okay, no, wait, maybe I can do this, maybe I can do that. And then at the end of the conversation, the person might not have said anything, but me speaking it out, I've come up with all these better ideas. And I'm like, oh, thank you for listening. And like, well, I didn't really do much, but yeah, you were there to listen. And I was able to actually process my thoughts. So I think when
That's
you're
right.
writing, you're intentional.
That's right. I agree with that. And unfortunately, I know that it works. It's just the matter of sitting myself down and doing it.
Yeah, that's the hardest part. People always ask, well, how do I start doing the book or whatever? Just start. That's the hardest part. Once you sit down and you start, even if you carve out 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, or you can even do 15 minutes a week. But once you start and you start writing and you just get it out, you'd be amazed at how easy it becomes. The starting is always the hardest part.
Definitely inspired me with your podcast, with your books, the the poem you had, the entry you had on healing. That really spoke to me. It really touched me, and
Oh,
uh,
thank you.
it really did. It it echoed some similar thoughts that I have going on. So I appreciate you sharing your gift with the world.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. That was one of the things that I don't know, I with sharing my poetry, I didn't think that I would do that. But once I did it, it just became like I felt like there was a need, because I'm on a mission to spread love in a world that seems to be full of hate.
Mm.
And so I've just been on that mission trying to spread some positivity, some love wherever I can. I want everybody to be the best version of themselves. I want people to be okay. And so I feel like I have to do my part. I can't sit here and complain about things and how things look if I'm not contributing to making them better. So I really appreciate that.
Yes, sir, and keep going, keep doing that. One of the things we're talking about, talking to your people, and that is something I do want everybody to sit down with the phone and have those conversations. But one other thing that I'm doing, I realize everybody may not be as good at it as I am, or may not know how to ask the questions that I do. So I also want to let people know that I'm available for that too. I'll come to your family reunions. I'll come to your cookouts. I will help you interview your parents or your family members. I'll do it for you. I mean, of course, there's a cost, and I'm not public. I'm not trying to what do you call it? Plug. I'm not trying to do
Right.
a free plug.
You could do
But
whatever you want. Yeah.
that's where I'm going with this, because it's that important to me. If you feel you can't do it, yeah, I want to do it, because we need these stories. The Library of Congress has a whole section devoted to what they call slave narratives. Someone went back and at the turn of this century and talked with people who had been enslaved, recorded their voices
No.
on audio. And you can go back at any time and listen to them talk about those things. People who have survived the Holocaust, those who maybe have seen some horrible things in war, those people who had lived through enslavement. A lot of times they didn't want to talk about it. It was too
Yeah.
painful, and the children couldn't really get them to talk about it. So when you have those people who have dared to bare their souls and tell you exactly what it was like and what things were, uh, that is gold. And you said everybody has a book. I believe that everybody has a story to tell. And the person that you maybe are discounting, or the person you're putting off having a conversation with, you're hurting yourself. And I'll say this
Hmm.
and then I'll leave it alone. Family beefs, family disagreements, people who aren't talking to each other for whatever reason. Once that person is gone, you don't get a chance to make it right. You don't get a chance to go back and talk to them. You don't get a chance to hear their voice again.
Yeah.
Whatever the problem was, we need to be able to come together and sit down and talk about it and be honest with the other person. If you've done something to hurt me, I need to be able to say, hey, Terrence, you know why I'm so pissed off and ticked off at what you did? I'm so ticked off because you're one of the people that I really looked up to. You're one of the people that I emulated. And when you said what you said, that hurt me. It hurt me to my core. And the other person sitting across from that may be able to be like, wow,
Yeah.
I had that kind of impact on you. You care about me that much. You love me. I didn't think you cared. So that's why I said what I said. I've seen it happen. And until we can break down those barriers and have honest conversations, when you can have one party of the two with the issue be bold enough to say, you know what? I don't care. I don't like what you did. Maybe I don't even like you, but I'm gonna stand in my truth. And I'm
Yeah.
gonna tell you the things that I like about you, things I love about you, why this is hurting me so much that you're not in my life the way you used to be. And then we can fix it. Then we can do like you did, my friend, in your beautiful poem. We can get to the healing when we put all of our hurt out on the table.
Yeah, that's so important. You just got my mind going again about with families, these family beefs and not talking to somebody who you grew up with, and sometimes it's siblings, and like I said earlier, sometimes at the end of the day it's just a misunderstanding or misinformation, and nobody actually sat down and talked to each other and say, hey.
Right.
And then when you have these conversations, you have to be willing to be ready for how they respond. I mean, you may not like it, but they have to get it out. And I think that's a part of it too. It's like it's not going to be all roses and flowers and that sort of thing, but it's going to be necessary. And I think once you get through it, that's when the healing begins, and that's where you can repair a relationship, because family is very important to me. I know that family is very important to you. At the event, I noticed you had your family with you. Really appreciated seeing that. I mean, that just really spoke volumes. How do you, I guess, have a work-life balance? I know you're a very busy person, but how you kind of balance that?
Well, my family is everything to me. We have our challenges, just like other people, but because I live in the challenges, they seem like they're maybe a little bit more difficult, maybe than some people's challenges. My son has special needs, and um, sometimes in crowds, uh, different things can happen.
Yeah.
He may have a meltdown. He may get in his feelings or get emotional about something, and you just never really know when it's going to happen. We just have to be there to try to help him and guide him through it. And but when those things happen, it can be very taxing and very trying, especially for people who don't understand what's happening. Um, so it's just always been something. This is the family that I have, and I love them, and we love hanging out together. And when we step out of our house, it's James Party of Five,
Yeah.
and these are my ride or dies. So if you don't want any one of them here, then none of us are going to be here,
Right.
because this is what we do. So yeah, it was not a question. When they all can come, I want them there, and we support each other like that. It's very important to me.
I remember while you were talking, it just reminded me of that picture. It feels like I've seen your children grow up, because I remember that picture. Was it Easter that you all were in front of the house, in front of the tree? And then
Yeah.
you did like a now picture. I was like, wow, even the tree has grown.
Exactly. Yeah, they don't stay small for long.
Yeah, that is wow. That's amazing. I really appreciate you. You know, like you said, if we all can't come, then hey, I don't need to come. I think a lot of times some people don't really value family as much. They don't really showcase their family, but I love that you showcase your family, and I
Those are
love
my people, man.
yeah, the love you show towards your wife. Really appreciate that. And reminds me, I followed her Facebook page a couple years ago on Aisle 9. I'm a fan of her writing as well. So I just wanted to let you know that. Yeah.
She's awesome. She's amazing, and she's got some books coming too. We gotta
Okay.
work with each other and
Yeah.
get them to the finish line. Yeah, she's an amazing writer. Thank you.
Oh, man, no problem. You've been at Live 5 for over 20 years. Doesn't seem like it.
It
Um,
doesn't.
during that time, I know you I know you've had a couple of strange um, stories you might have had to cover. What would you say was probably the strangest, most bizarre story you had to cover?
Wow. I don't even know. And that's because anytime somebody asks me that question, they all rush to the front of my mind. They,
Right.
pick me. And
I can
whatnot.
imagine.
So I don't know the most bizarre. I know the most impactful would have been the Emmanuel 9.
Yeah.
That was the hardest story I ever had to go through in terms of covering it. After I sit with this question for another hour or two, I'll probably be able to list about 10 or more, but definitely that one, because it
Yeah.
wasn't just one story. It wasn't just one day. It enveloped, a large part of our lives. Everybody who lives in Charleston, especially, was invested in that story for years, and
Yeah.
in many cases we still are. It's just so difficult for me. I hope you don't feel like it's a cop out, but it
No,
really
it's
is
not. It's
difficult for
not,
me
because
to.
I that story really, in your selflessness and your humanity in the way you reported the story, really spoke volumes to your character and who you were. You could tell your heart for people. Like, if nobody ever heard of Raphael James before that moment, they got a glimpse into you, and they got a glimpse into you, who you are, and who you stand for. And I remember my wife and I, we went to the documentary they had at the movie theater, and that was heavy, but it was necessary to watch. And just seeing you again in that moment, it just brought it back. And I really appreciate, like, whenever you're reporting something, whenever you're sharing something on Facebook, your humanity it pours out. Like, your compassion for people, it pours out. You can tell that this is not just a job for you or whatever. It's like you're really invested in people, the community, family values, and you want everybody to be better. You want everybody to do better. So I just want to give you your flowers while you're here. That just thank you very much for all that you do.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. They say in Charleston, you've got beignets and you've got cumyas. I was a cumya. I came here in 2002, and the community really embraced me. They stood behind me. They said they were proud of me. They listened to my report. They supported me on the news. And then, after Emmanuel, it just hurt in so many different places. It hurt in places I didn't even know I had capacity to hurt. But then to watch the people come together, to see the families react, to form relationships and bonds with the family. It's like sometimes when we see each other, it is just like me seeing my own family that
Yeah.
I haven't seen in years. We embrace and we hug, and before we leave, we tell each other, "I love you." It's not an act. It's not a put on. Those kinds of relations are not just the Emmanuel families, but the whole community. The day after the shooting, the people coming to the church, the people stopping by the corner where I was doing live reports and just crying together, praying together. And then the different protests that we would have throughout the city. Uh, the George Floyd protests, I was down
Yeah.
there covering those. At some point, Charleston stopped being a stop along the way in my career, and it became, no, this is where I live. These are my
Yeah.
people. And, we're going to be there for each other. We're going to tell each other stories, and we're going to support each other and extol each other's virtues. And this is just a wonderful place to live. And I can't say enough about the people of the Low Country. And I thank you for accepting a Akamia and embracing me as if I'm a Benya.
Yeah, most definitely. Before I let you get out of here, what's one thing about you that you wish more people knew?
I'm not sure there is anything about me I wish more people knew, because believe it or not, I'm a very introverted person. I don't really like putting a lot about me on blast. Um, I, I, I hope people see me and know that I'm a person who loves God, a person who loves his family, and a person who loves his community. And if you can get those three things out of the essence of who I am, that's really about all there is.
Okay, that's good. We talked about this earlier. You mentioned helping people talk to their people, and you'll be putting together a course. How could somebody get in contact with you to maybe sign up for the course or be on the lookout for it?
I'm still learning all of this.
Okay.
I've got the course, a lot of it is already done, figuring out how to do it. Do I build a website, or do I just use one of the other platforms out there? I haven't quite gotten it figured out yet, but if you want to email me at Raph James, RAPHJAMES at gmail.com, I can get you on my list, and I can definitely let you know when I have other projects coming out. So that's Raph James, RAPHJAMES at gmail.com, and I can forward you the link to sign up.
Okay. Before I let you get out of here again, I remember one time I was watching the interview you were in, and the interviewer brought up photography. Do you still dabble in photography?
Just dabble.
Just dabble.
I do more video now. My children have picked it up. My youngest daughter Nia and my oldest daughter Jaden, they do really good work. No, I still love it. I just don't have the time like I used to devote to it. But I love capturing images, and I love learning about photography and light and how to make images using those techniques.
Okay, yeah, my sister, she started off in photography, and I think she does more videography now. Your World on Film, Trinice Elmore, and I'm very proud of her with that. I kind of dabbled in photography too when I was younger. So anytime I hear about anybody who's into photography, I always ask that question, like, hey, do you still kind of dabble into it? So
Charleston is a beautiful place to take pictures, so many different places to go. I always say, once I get to the point where I have some leisure time and don't have quite as many stresses, I'll definitely pick up the camera again and just go and see what I can find.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time. Is there anything that you want to share with my listeners before you go? Any final thoughts? How they can connect with you?
Well, you can connect with me at Live 5 News, Raphael.James at gray.tv is my work email address. My personal email address is raphjames@gmail.com. And right now, the last word I think I'd want to leave for people is, even if you don't reach out to me, even if you don't take my course, even if you don't buy my book when it comes out, even if you don't do anything with me, I need you to talk to your people. I need you to talk to the people you love and sit them down. I don't care if it's in a back room at a family reunion or a cookout or a gathering. Tell them, look, I want to put this camera on you for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and ask you 2 or 3 questions. You can write the questions out in advance that you want to ask. You can even let them see them. I don't recommend it, but you can even let them see it and just have a conversation. Find out who they are. Find out what drives them. Find out what their regrets are. Find out what their hopes are. Find out what hurt them the most and how they overcame that hurt. Those things are necessary for us to be able to see people in a different light, for us to be able to appreciate what people have gone through, and for us to help develop and shape our own lives for the journey that we're all facing.
You all heard it. Talk to your people. Raphael James, thank you for joining the Brown Sugar Cafe podcast. And to my listeners, remember, keep pushing forward.
I appreciate you, my brother.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Brown Sugar Cafe podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Terrence P. Elmore, and this is the place where poetry meets conversation. Hit that follow button and turn on your notifications so you won't miss an episode. Check out my blog, thebrownsugarcafe.blog. Also connect with me on Instagram at thebrownsugarcafe. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and as always, remember, keep pushing forward.